If we want to win at chess, we have to learn how to deal with an opponent that directly attacks our king. Because no matter how hard we try, occasionally our king is going to come under attack. In this game from Bobby Fischer, played at the Interzonal in 1958, we see some very effective methods in dealing with a direct attack. His opponent was Raul Sanguinetti, our Argentinian grandmaster, one of their top players from the 1950s and 1960s. He has the white pieces in this game. Fischer has black. Let us jump right in. White begins with e4. Fischer plays c5, and very quickly, no surprise, we have a Najdorf Sicilian on the board. It's been said that white can play any move here that doesn't lose material, and it's a decent move. Here, white plays f4. This is one of the most direct attacking moves in the Najdorf, and it almost looks like a King's Gambit type of formation against the Najdorf. E5 is played by Fischer. You can play e6. There are a couple of options here, but e5 is the most direct, putting a question to that knight on d4, saying, what do you want to do? Sanguinetti moves the knight to f3 because he's going to use that knight to attack on the king's side, so he wants to keep it on that side of the board. Queen to c7. You figure he's moving his queen early. Well, there's a good reason. He's strengthening the e5 pawn, and maybe putting some x-ray pressure on f4, but the most important thing is probably just keeping this light-squared bishop out of the c4 square. White would love to have that bishop on this diagonal, so Fischer puts a stop to that. Bishop to d3 is played instead. Now, right now, it's defending e4, and it looks like it's just blocked by that pawn, but in some variations, imagine, for example, white plays the knight here, this knight captures it, and then this pawn takes. In that case, this diagonal would be opened up. So there is some latent attacking strength at this bishop, with this bishop at d3. Fischer plays knight b to d7, castles, and b5, preparing to fianchetto the light-squared bishop and put direct pressure on e4, probably the most vulnerable point in white's position. Queen to e1, sort of red alert time. We begin to see the outlines of white's attacking ideas. This queen could go to g3, but most likely h4 to prepare an attack against a castled king. Bishop to b7. Now knight to h4, aiming at this f5 square. White is pretty sure black is going to castle short. The king just isn't safe anywhere else. And a knight on f5 would really be a dangerous piece for Fischer to have to deal with. So he immediately stops that with g6, keeps that knight out of f5, and also blunts this bishop if this diagonal were to ever open up, making it bite on the g6 pawn. So the knight goes back to f3. He'll later want to come to g5. Bishop to g7. Maybe this diagonal will open up. Who knows? Now queen to h4. Castles and pawn takes. So he takes the pawn here because he wants to open up the half-open f-file, make it half open, so the rooks can put pressure on d6 and on f7. Pawn takes, and bishop to h6. Now, this attack is crude, direct, and dangerous. And it's played in other lines, too, like a Grand Prix attack and so forth. The idea is this. What white wants to do is take the wants to play the knight to g5, take the g7 bishop, then distract this knight away. Maybe he'll play knight to d5 to bring it away. Maybe he'll sack and exchange. And then once that knight is gone, he'll just play queen takes h7 mate. It seems like a lot of steps, but the truth is it can get very dangerous very quickly. Now, Fischer was obviously well aware of this approach, so he immediately does something to stop it. He plays knight to h5, and this is one of the principles of attack, or dealing with an attack. Don't let your opponent get comfortable. Don't let them just put their pieces where they want to put them. Make their job as hard as possible. So his knight is interfering with the queen's access to the bishop and the h7 square, and even the knight might hop into the f4 square, and black might cause white some problems. Bishop takes g7, king g7, rook a to d1, moving the rook to the open file, and now knight to f4. The knight goes to the strong f4 square. Now, rook to f2 is played by white, and this variation is kind of subtle. Let's take a quick look. It's tricky, but it has a really cool idea behind it. It looks like white can play knight takes e5 here, right? Removing the defender of the knight, and after knight takes, queen takes. But what would happen is knight takes g2, counterattacking the queen, and if queen to e7, queen takes e5, queen d7, knight to e3. there's a fork here. But it looks like it's not good enough because white can take the bishop. But in that case, Fischer would play this powerful, powerful move, incredible, queen to c5. And now we see why Sanguinetti played the rook to f2. Not only avoiding the fork, but avoiding this X-ray pressure. Black is threatening to take a rook with check, so white would not be able to recapture the knight. And get this, if the king moves to h1, boom, rook to a7, and white's queen is trapped because the queen at c5 defends the rook at a7, and that's it. And if he plays something like, say, b4 to distract the queen away from the defense of the rook, then simply queen to g5, and the threat of mate on g2 combined with the threat to the queen would win. That's pretty complicated, but it helps explain why rook to f2 is played. Also, white would like to double, perhaps, on the f-file. So Fischer plays f6, strengthening the e5 pawn and making it very hard for white to get in on the king side. Rook f to d2, seeing that the f-file won't be as fruitful as he had hoped. He moves to the d-file and is now threatening bishop takes b5, followed by rook takes knight check. So Fischer has to do something about that. He plays knight to c5. Now, in this position, the move a3, preventing b4, kicking the knight away, probably the best move. Sanguinetti plays bishop to f1, and I think he was hoping that he would be able to use his pawn to his advantage. After b4, the move knight to d5 comes. Now, it hits the queen, so Fischer has to do something about it. He takes it, and now ed5. So this is a very strong pawn, and it can cause a lot of trouble for white. But here we see how talented Fischer was, and he plays this strong, beautiful move, knight to e4. We talk about controlling the center is the best way to deal with a kingside attack. Look at these knights. Total control of the center. And the rook at d2 has nowhere to go. So Fischer's going to get the exchange here. Queen to e1, knight takes d2, queen takes d2. So white has lost the exchange, but he's prepared to get some counterplay with this d-pawn. But it was a cold shower when Fischer just took the pawn. He just took it. It looks like he's losing a knight, but if white takes that knight, then rook a to d8, and that's it. There's a skewer here. Queen to the rook. The queen would move out of the way. He would just win the rook, or white would just have to give up his queen for a rook. So Fischer has taken away black's counterplay, and that's pretty much it. White plays, taking away white's counterplay. White plays one more move, c4, but after black takes en passant. He resigned in this position. Fischer has a rook and two pawns for a bishop in a dominating position. So we see Fischer dealing with that attack very effectively, making sure white isn't able to put his pieces on the comfortable squares he would like to, and then counterattacking in the center. And of course, there was a little bit of that old Fischer brilliance and calculation that we could only hope to copy ourselves. I hope you've enjoyed the game. See you again soon at Chess Dog. Goodbye.